This just in, U.S. Attorney Jesse Liu has recommended the Department of Justice bring charges against former FBI Deputy Director and current CNN contributor Andrew McCabe for lying to investigators. McCabe appealed Liu's decision to Deputy Attorney General Jeff Rosen, who rejected his plea. The department rejected your appeal of the United States Attorney's Office's decision in this matter. Any further inquiry should be directed to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Read an email sent to McCabe's legal team by the DOJ. So we will keep our eye on this. I could not be here yesterday, and thanks very much to Mark and Alan Sanders the day before. I was actually doing my morning show on Tuesday. In the last hour, I got a text. My wife had been taken to the ER. She's okay. She just has some sickness, and it's affected her breathing and her heart rate. We spent all day yesterday between cardiologists and pulmonologists, and I, honest to goodness, I think she was outside. She took our son to soccer practice last Wednesday, and that right after that it started. And I think it's just allergies and got into her lungs. She's got to have scans to rule out a pulmonary embolism and whatnot. But I really think it's this, and I just keep saying, man, will they just give you a steroid pack? But I'm not a doctor, so abundance of caution there. In any event, glad to be back with you today. Because I wasn't here yesterday, I did want to spend just a moment on 9/11. I try to every year on 9/11. Let people call in and say where they are, where they were that day. I don't want to do that now. What I do want to do, though, is just play this from Tom Cotton on the floor of the Senate late yesterday.
September 11th is a solemn anniversary. 18 years later, we still remember the toll from that terrible day. Nearly 3,000 Americans lost their lives in the attacks on the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and United Flight 93. But every American experienced the pain of loss that day. Just as we mourn the innocent lives lost, we also remember the heroism of our first responders who ran toward danger and death to help their fellow Americans. Out of the ashes of that terrible tragedy arose a strength and unity that the whole world came to admire. September 11th altered the course of our nation's history in a blaze of fire and smoke. And for so many Americans, it altered the course of our lives. Our fighting men and women deployed overseas just weeks later and remain in the fight today. So many Americans joined them, enlisting to defend our nation. Young kids who witnessed firefighters rush into the burning towers grew up and themselves joined units with old-fashioned names like Engine and Ladder. A generation of intelligence officers dedicated themselves to preventing another 9/11, and they have, and they still do. And our lives continued to be altered because the consequences of September 11th are still with us. The attacks of 18 years ago continue to claim new victims as first responders and others succumb to injuries and illnesses that trace back to that morning. The al-Qaeda terrorists who attacked us are bloodied yet undefeated, while the Taliban terrorists who gave them safe haven threaten to regain control in Afghanistan. Most tragic of all, our brave soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines continue to fall in the line of duty in defense of our country. Just last week, Army Sergeant First Class LSA Berto Ortiz was killed on the battlefield in Afghanistan. September 11th is his story, too, a story of valor and sacrifice. So the story of September 11th continues to unfold many years after the fact. May its memory strengthen our resolve to continue fighting the enemies of freedom, and may we never, ever forget.
Amen. Amen. I will get into this a little bit, but it was somewhat unusual on September 11th, of all things, for the president to decide that the big policy that day is going to be to ban vaping. We will talk about that. It's 9/11, I think, should be a day for memorial and for reflection. And that's why I think John Avlon at CNN screwed up in some of his commentary. I want to play for you. Now, I got so busy with Andrew McCabe news out of the gate, I didn't give you the phone number. It is 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB-TALK. If you want to join me, you can always reach out on social media at EW Erickson. If you like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever, email eric@theresurgent.com. It's ERICK. I want to play this clip by John Avalon. It went viral. A lot of conservatives beating him up for this, and in part they're beating him up because of the graphic behind him when he said it, that right-wing terrorists have killed more people than Islamic terrorists in the United States since 9/11. It comes from the New America Foundation, which leans left. I don't think he should have done it, but I want to play his remark in full context for you. I don't want to just excerpt it. I want you to hear his entire statement so that we can discuss this.
In the past year alone, we've seen the convictions of a Bronx resident scoping out targets for Hezbollah, 2 Chicago men and a Wisconsin woman for trying to support ISIS, a former U.S. soldier from California charged with trying to set off a bomb in Long Beach, while a Pittsburgh resident was charged with planning an attack on a church in the name of ISIS. Now, these are just some of the foiled jihadist plots that we know about. But in the past year, we've also been forced to confront a growing threat from another form of violent extremism, white nationalist terrorism. We've seen the deadliest attack targeting Latinos in recent U.S. history at a Walmart in El Paso. We've seen an attack on a synagogue near San Diego, which followed the Tree of Life attack in Pittsburgh, the largest massacre of Jewish Americans in our history. These terror suspects echoed white supremacist talk about replacement, hatred towards Jews, immigrants, refugees. And that's not including the would-be attacks we've seen thwarted by law enforcement, like the arrest of an Ohio man who police say threatened a Jewish community center, and the arrest of a Coast Guard officer with a massive weapons cache accused of plotting to kill Democrats and journalists. Here's a startling statistic. Since 9/11, right-wing terrorists have killed more people in the United States than jihadist terrorists. That's according to New America. There are some folks for their own political purposes, would like to keep the focus on only one form of political violence over another. But that would be unwise, because we don't have the luxury of choosing which threats we face. And there's a case to be made that these threats actually echo each other, as our colleague Jim Sciutto and others have argued. They're weaponized versions of tribalism, motivated by fear and finding identity in their hatred of the other. As Max Fisher of the Times wrote, in both, there's the apocalyptic ideology that predicts and promises to hasten a civilizational conflict that will consume the world. To mark the 18th anniversary of 9/11 is to reflect on how we're all the children of 9/11. That attack unleashed destructive forces that we're still wrestling with. But to truly learn the lessons of 9/11 is to resolve not to let hate win or fear define us. And that's your reality.
Okay. Here's my problem with this. It wasn't appropriate for 9/11. What John Evelyn said is not actually wrong, but it's not appropriate for 9/11. The hey, you think Islamists are bad. What about right-wing white guys? They're worse. That's you have that conversation today, but yesterday it wasn't appropriate. But there is something to be said in this as well, in that he actually isn't wrong. There is a growing body of evidence that there are young, lonely white men who are going on social media and becoming radicalized in the same way that young Muslim men in the Middle East are. They don't have actual community, so they go online to find community. They build friendships within very welcoming groups of radicals, and those welcoming groups of radicals, they're doing it intentionally, purposefully, to lure these guys in and basically brainwash them and get them to be part of a cult. We're seeing this with jihadists through online activity. We're seeing this with right-wing white nationalist, white supremacist groups. And if you don't like to say right, just white nationalist, white supremacist groups. See, here's the problem. You know, I've mentioned this before. It's one of my favorite verses. It's not my favorite, but it's one of my favorite verses of Scripture is seek the welfare of the city in which you live, and there you'll find your welfare. Seek the welfare of the city in which you're in exile, and there you'll find your welfare. And very few of us are doing that anymore. I'm trying to come up with ways for my kids to get involved in their immediate community. Everyone is so obsessed with Washington these days. Washington is the be-all, end-all. How many of you are directly impacted right now by Washington, D.C.? Where are you listening to me right now? Are you stuck on the interstate? Are you waiting for your kid on a soccer field or football field? Are you in line at a school because your kids had detention and you're late in the day getting them? Are you in your home? I guarantee you, your local school board, your local Department of Transportation, your local city, your local county, your state government is impacting you more at this very moment than Washington, D.C. I guarantee you, if you're stuck on the interstate, it's the person in front of you who's impacting you, and the person in front of that person more than Donald Trump is. I mean, Donald Trump has not negatively affected any of your lives in a direct way. There are certainly long-term economic issues to deal with that Washington affects. Tax cuts, Washington certainly affects that. A combined effort, but in your day-to-day, daily lives, your local community affects you way more than Washington, D.C. And many of you are fixated on Washington and not your local community. Many of you are fixated not in the city in which you're in exile looking for its welfare, but on Washington, D.C., where you're not going to find welfare because Washington wants to put you on welfare. What about the homeless guy? Many of you passed a homeless person today. Do you know that person's name? Do you know where that person goes when the weather's bad? Do you know where that person eats? Or do you know where the local homeless shelter is, where the local food bank is? Have you helped? Do you have any inclination to help in your local community? I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm guilty of this as well. I'm not really practicing what I preach. I have a hard time because I work too. But I think all of us should apply ourselves better to doing something for our local community instead of fixating on Washington, D.C. Tonight, after this is over, I got a group of people coming in to drink my bourbon because they sought the welfare of the city in which they were in exile. They gave money to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta during our telethon, our carathon. They were looking to seek the welfare of their local community and those of their community. And they'll be coming tonight to eat barbecue with me and drink some bourbon with me. And I got to tell you, this is one of the problems with lonely, isolated young men is they're not seeking the welfare of the city in which they're in exile. They're trying to build a community online because they have no community offline. And when all of us, them, you, me, when we build a community online, we find people who look exactly like us and think exactly like us. And so we don't actually have community. Our next door neighbor may be a Democrat. The person we're friends with on Facebook, I bet you isn't. Unless they're a direct kin or you know them some way, what actually happens is you go out and you find people who think exactly like you, who share your values, who share your either faith values or mostly political values online, and you lose the ability to relate to people who don't. You rarely encounter those people if you're not out in your local community. And because you're not out in your local community, sharing and breaking bread with someone who views politics differently than you but cares about the exact same cause, you have a harder time relating to those people, and you fixate more on Washington, D.C. And that's what's happening with these young men who become radicalized online. They have no offline community. And Avalon was right on that. I don't think he should have done it on 9/11. But I think all of us, myself included, need to do a better job of focusing on our local news and our local politics and our local people in need than just talking about Washington, D.C., where your day-to-day life is not actually impacted as much as you may believe. Hi there. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, if you would like to be a part of the program, 87. No, that's the wrong number. That's for the other show. I've been waiting for this moment to come. Normally, I do it on the other show. This number is 404-872-0750 or 1-800-WSB-TALK. The other day, I nearly gave out my cell phone number. Yes. You know, doing 5 hours of radio today can be hard sometimes. Now, it's not nearly as hard as Marianne Williamson trying to come to terms with reality. Marianne Williamson was on a hot mic talking about things she didn't expect to be heard publicly. Have you heard this audio? It happened just a while ago.
Does it say that Fox News is nicer to me than the lefties are?
I'm sorry?
What does it say? That the conservatives are nicer to me?
It's a bizarre world, man.
It's such a bizarre world. You know, I'm such a lefty. I mean, I'm a serious lefty. But I understand why people on the right call them godless. I mean, it's like, I didn't think the left was as mean as the right. They are.
Well, I'm just right.
Yeah. She didn't think the left was as mean as the right, which tells you, I mean, she went into this thinking that the right was mean, and she thinks everyone, you know, people are nasty these days. You know, I am aware of a person who suggested that the reason my wife got lung cancer was it was the almighty creator trying to cajole me into supporting Donald Trump in 2016. I wish I was making that up. But she actually said this, that it was to cajole me toward reconciling that Donald Trump was God's chosen one or some such nonsense. Just nastiness from people. The number of people on the left I know who have cheered on my wife's and my health problems over the last couple of years, that it was good riddance, we should die. Having people show up at my house, having people yell at my kids. There is a lot of nastiness in the world. And it's striking to me that I have seen it from both sides. And it is only now that Marianne Williamson, outside of her bubble, is seeing it from her own side, which I have found to be, particularly as they embrace secularism as religion, to be far worse than a lot of what comes from your typical right of center political activist. Now, speaking of secularism as religion, I got to go on and do this. This is kid appropriate. It's just going to hurt your head. In fact, let me give you this admonition. If you're in the car driving, please keep your hands on the steering wheel. If you are not in a car or anywhere where you can use your hands off a steering wheel or something, you need to press the left palm of your hand into your left temple and the right palm of your hand into your right temple, because otherwise your head is going to explode with what you are about to hear. Your head is going to explode. I don't even want to use, you may have heard this already. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. Just understand your warning. If your head explodes, you cannot sue me, because I've warned you that your head is going to explode when you hear this.
What we wanted to do was to take the opportunity to raise the whole conversation with guests who come through to the aquarium, just to raise that exact point, that there is a difference between gender and sex. And in terms of the way that we manage the colony at the aquarium, we wouldn't manage them differently based on whether they are females or males. What we wanted to do with this chick was give guests an opportunity to meet that individual and learn about its personality without assigning it any sort of preconceived sort of gender roles like we would if we were to.
So when you say that it is common for Gen 2 penguin chicks to be genderless, what exactly do you mean by that? Are you saying that there are no kind of sex-specific or gender-specific behaviours in Gen 2 penguins?
It's a really sort of difficult subject to navigate specifically. You will get small differences in terms of behaviour based on whether they are male or female.
It's not like boy penguins are playing football and girl penguins are doing the knitting or something like that.
Yeah, because it's interesting when you say assign gender roles. What gender roles can you assign to a penguin?
Exactly, and I think that's the key thing. You don't really see it in the animal kingdom. There is a little bit of conversation going on at the moment in terms of whether we might be seeing gender roles in some higher primates, much like we're often compared to other higher primates because we're so similar. But with penguins, there's a difference between sex differences and with gender roles. Penguins would have to have some sort of society where other penguins were potentially putting pressure on little baby penguins that they should be more masculine or more feminine and things like that. So what we wanted to do was give guests that opportunity to not be putting those assumptions onto a little Gen 2 chick.
I don't know about y'all, but when I go to the zoo, I don't say, "Oh, look, it's the boy penguin or the girl." When I go to the Georgia Aquarium and the little penguins are swimming around following you as you walk past, I don't think, "Oh, well, that's a stalker because it's a boy penguin," or, "Oh, that little girl penguin's upset." What the heck is this? If you're not following along because you're totally confused at what you just heard, the London Zoo has decided to raise its newest penguins as genderless animals. Yes, genderless animals. Who cares? I mean, what we need to know is, the boy penguin's not going to lay the egg. Now, there's something else you need to know about this penguin chick and why it's really in the news. What you need to understand about this genderless penguin is that its parents are gay. No, I'm not making that up either. It's a gay penguin couple raising the genderless penguin chick. Now, how can there be gay penguins? Well, there aren't, actually. There aren't gay penguins. But the left is emotionally invested in the idea that homosexuality rears its head everywhere naturally in nature. And so there are two penguin dudes who hang out all the time. They don't have relationships with the female penguins. They're with each other. And they don't actually do what male and females can do together. They don't do any of that. But they've decided at the zoo that this is a gay couple. I mean, it could be they think every day is Saturday, and Saturdays are for the boys, from what I'm told on Instagram. But it's these two dude penguins taking care of the shit. Now, you should know that it is very common within penguin communities that the male penguins do care for the chicks, and it is the female penguins who go off hunting. And so we're supposed to say that these two male penguins doing what is very typical of penguins from Antarctica to your local zoo, that they're somehow a gay couple. In fact, the New York Zoo at one point supposedly had a gay penguin couple, and they tried to hatch a rock, which sounds like they were actually crazy penguins, not gay penguins, but they tried to hatch a rock. You know, it's also very, very common for the male penguins to, in penguin groups, I don't know what you call them, a murder of penguins, a fabulous penguin tribe that somehow or another, that it's very common among the fabulous penguins that they actually let the men hatch the eggs. This is crazy. This is left-wing nonsense in zoology. It shows you how pervasive left-wing mental derangement is delving into even trying to get into science. There are not genderless animals. There are male and female animals. I don't know of a single person on the planet. Maybe your kid wants to go see the girl tiger and the boy tiger. My kids just want to go see the tiger. I have no idea. This is genuine, insane madness, and it is mainstreaming absolutely silly nonsense. But there you have it, folks. Genderless penguin chick raised by a gay penguin couple at the London Zoo. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here at Atlanta's Evening News. In an hour and 20 minutes, I'm going to be drinking bourbon and eating barbecue with people who donated to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. You should donate next year. You have an hour to think about that. We'll be walking through the Jefferson's line of bourbon. We've got all sorts of bourbon from Jefferson's tonight. Now, we need to discuss vaping. I personally think that vaping should be banned because people who vape look like butt clowns. I mean, this steam coming in. They look like Wile E. Coyote angry with steam coming out of them. It's silly nonsense. Well, the president and the FDA have decided to ban vaping. We should all actually be rather disturbed by this, that the government, through executive order of the president, can wipe out an entire industry. No president should have that power, Republican or Democrat. Nobody should be able to, even if you look like a butt clown by doing it. I mean, honestly, grown people walking down the street, sucking on a USB stick and blowing steam out of their mouth. It just looks silly. It looks silly. Or you got the ones that look like the little lightsaber thing. No, no. Kids, if you've been vaping now that the president's decided to ban them, there is something you can fall back on. It is really legal in all 50 states, and you don't look like a butt clown doing it. In fact, some people argue you look sophisticated, which is the problem. It's called a cigarette. It is perfectly legal. You use a cigarette, and you don't look like you're a ridiculous person walking down the street pretending to be a dragon blowing steam out of your mouth. They've had cigarettes around for a very long time. It is old school technology. All you need is a match. That's it. All you need is a match, and you too can have a cigarette. It's ridiculous. By the way, this reminds me, I just got an email. Hi, Eric. All you need to know is that it's spelled H-I-G-H. Hall of Flowers is just around the corner, and Autumn Brands is thrilled to attend for the third time this year. Hall of Flowers is no doubt one of the most unique expos to attend. It is a trade show for licensed cultivators of top-quality cannabis, united by the vision of two families. And Autumn Brands is 50% women-owned. The company's committed to cultivating the best pesticide-free, sun-grown, indoor cannabis flower Mother Nature can provide. In fact, they have vape cartridges that are 80% THC and 100% extracted from estate-grown, pesticide-free plants using genuine C-cell hardware for reliability with a ceramic white. What the heck? I have no idea. But I'm being invited to a pot trade show for marijuana, for vaping. You know, the reality is the reason the president wants to do this is such an overreaction. 6 people have bought marijuana vape cartridges on the black market, and they've gotten sick and died. Six nationwide. They were black market. They were bought, who knows, Instagram vendors, something, I don't know. And they bought them, and they wound up dying, 6 of them. And so they're going to wipe out an entire industry, including tobacco, the whole Juul nonsense, all because of 6 people. Clearly, the FDA has wanted to do this for a while. All of us should be deeply troubled by the ability of the government to wipe out an entire industry without Congress passing a law. That's deeply, deeply, deeply troubling. Some sound bites on this, including an awkward moment from the president. You know, if I go to this thing, this Hall of Flowers, that I get a grab bag of marijuana. Maybe I should auction off. Somebody can pretend to be me. They'll be too baked to know it's not me, and you can go get your first. Good Lord, the things I get invited to these days. Okay, we gotta play some audio here. This is the president with a little bit of an awkward moment about the first lady.
Vaping has become a very big business, as I understand it, like a giant business in a very short period of time. But we can't allow people to get sick, and we can't have our youth be so affected. And I'm hearing it, and that's how the First Lady got involved. And she's got a son together that is a beautiful young man, and she feels very, very strongly about it. She's seen it. We're both reading it. A lot of people are reading it. But people are dying with vaping. So we're looking at it very closely. And you know, if nothing else, this is a conference that's going to let people know about it, because people are going to watch what we're saying. And parents are going to be a lot tougher with respect to their children. A lot of people think vaping is wonderful, it's great. It's really not wonderful. That's one thing I think we can say definitely, Commissioner. It's not a wonderful thing. It's got big problems. We have to find out the extent of the problem. It's so new. It's so new. But we're going to find out. And I hope that parents that you know, they have children, and the children are a certain age, I hope they're going to be able to make wise decisions, maybe based on what we're saying today. But
yeah, you know what this is a play for? Suburban moms. There are a lot of suburban moms who love that the president wants to ban vaping. I know, I wish I was making it up. Nope. A lot of suburban moms, they don't want to tell their kid no vaping. They want the president to do it for them. Here's the FDA commissioner who's been dying to do this.
So it'll take several weeks for us to put out the final guidance that would announce all the parameters around the enforcement policy. And then there will likely be about a 30-day delayed effective date, as is customary with FDA's good guidance practices. And at that point, all flavored e-cigarettes other than tobacco flavor would have to be removed from the market. Tobacco-flavored e-cigarettes, their manufacturers would, by May 2020, have to file for approval by FDA of their products. The other flavored product manufacturers can, at any time, also file, but they would be off the market until approved by FDA. The Obama administration had allowed these products to go onto the market in an unregulated way by delaying any enforcement in the hopes that people who are using combustible tobacco would transition to a less harmful form of nicotine delivery through e-cigarettes. But what we've seen is the data just shows the kids are getting access to these products in spite of our best efforts at enforcement, at retail enforcement, at controlling locations, at over 8,000 warning letters to retailers and others in spite of moving products off shelves. They've been going at it, so we simply have to remove these attractive flavored products from the marketplace until they secure FDA approval, if they can.
If they can. These attractive, seriously, people, we need the FDA to do this. Are we going to abdicate all parental responsibility to the federal government? Where Uncle Sam is going to be everybody's daddy? This is stupid. This is really genuinely stupid. I'm at a loss for who thinks it's a good idea that the federal government should be able to wipe out an entire industry without Congress ever passing a law. If they can do this to this industry, you just wait until Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, and the like get in there and start wielding their executive orders to wipe out industries they don't like. This is ridiculous. It is genuinely ridiculous. And they're doing it. They're taking advantage of 6 deaths without giving you the facts on those deaths so they can wipe out an industry. And listen, I think it looks ridiculous. I would ban it for people looking like idiots doing it, but there's really no power in the Constitution. Why, hello there. How are you? The phone number here, 404-872-0750, 1-800-WSB Talk. Rich and Marietta, welcome.
Hey there.
How are you?
I am fine. Your statement that the government should not be involved at all might be wrong in this case. I remember back in the 90s when Joe Cool was big with cigarette advertising, and there was a catalog on the counter where the register was, and the kids could pick it up and browse it. Was that a legal change, or was it through Congress? Or
It was the lawsuit. One of the things they did in the settlement was they agreed to get rid of Joe Cool. They sent him back to the desert.
Well, I agree with a ban temporarily until they can figure more stuff out, but not just hands down. We're done with it.
Well, I would be concerned with the FDA commissioner saying if they can get approval. To me, it seems like a moral panic, though. Carla in Atlanta, welcome.
Hi. I'm concerned because I am 57 years old and I smoked cigarettes for 39 years. Mm-hmm. I have weaned myself down to 3 milligrams of nicotine by vaping. So now I'm not going to be able to continue getting off nicotine because President Trump and his wife, who I have supported up until this point, have issues with it. What happens taking responsibility for your kids and teaching your kids what's right and what's wrong?
Uncle Sam's got to do it now. You're not allowed to, Carla. Whatever Uncle Sam says, we got to do. Yeah, listen.
And that's what's wrong.
I'm with you here. There are a lot of people who I think it looks silly when people are blowing steam out walking down the sidewalk, but you've weaned yourself off cigarettes, which were far more harmful, and slowly weaning yourself off nicotine through vaping. And I do know people who have taken up vaping for that very reason. And I guess the government, I really wonder if the tobacco lobby has something to do with this. Now, I think Philip Morris or one of them has bought into Juul or owned stock. One of them has also gotten into marijuana. But I'm wondering, have the tobacco lobbyists gotten the president to do this? They're taking advantage of these 6 deaths to do this. Listen, I don't smoke. I don't want to smoke. I don't want my kids to smoke. But I don't think Uncle Sam has a business saying, you got to stop. It's the whole thing. Take responsibility for yourselves, people. Hello there. It is Eric Erickson here. So this weekend, if you're in the Patriot Guard, those of you who know what the Patriot Guard is, I am interviewing Grover Sassman. He is the oldest Harley-Davidson owner in the country. He was in World War II. He was with MacArthur in the Philippines. He was a sergeant and Marine mechanic of Corsairs in World War II in the Pacific Theater. He just turned 98. We were going to do this on his birthday, actually, but the weather delayed it. A group is flying a Corsair into Macon to the Middle Georgia Regional Airport on Sunday. The Patriot Guard is invited. I expect a lot of Harley riders. Grover Sassman, if you don't know, he is the guy who sold Greg Almond his motorcycle in which he wrecked. His Harley dealership has just a very storied history, and he is the oldest still active Harley dealer owner in the country, and a World War II veteran. Looking forward to interviewing him on Sunday and being there with my family. Now, let us. A lot of people still want to talk about the issue of vaping. David in Locust Grove, you're next. David, you there?
Yes, I'm here, Eric. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Hey, listen, my wife, we used to be smokers, and she decided to do vaping, and it totally messed her up, dude. She vaped, and it was bad news. It was bad news for us, and
well, look, I'm sorry to hear, and I don't want my kids to smoke or to vape, but David, I do also know a lot of people who they turn to vaping to wean themselves off of nicotine and were successful
exactly,
doing it.
and that's what my wife was doing. She was trying to wean herself off of the nicotine, and she might have gotten her hands on something that wasn't a good thing. So.
Yeah. Well, look, I hate it for you. Thank you for being willing to share. It's again, we're talking about chemicals, and so does the FDA need to regulate them? They've been out there for a while, and I just don't know that the government needs to regulate this stuff. I mean, if they want to ban it, but this tinkering, it's like cigarettes. The government tells you that cigarettes are terrible, cigarettes will kill you, cigarettes will cause lung cancer. Well, then ban them. But if you're not going to ban them, don't be the ninny state with them. People have to take responsibility, and there are sad situations. There are. We shouldn't minimize the sad situations, but we should also be honest about what's going on here. Sean in Locust Grove, you're next.
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on how much influence the big tobacco companies had.
See, I think that's what's going on here. I know some of the tobacco companies have bought into. One of them, I think, has bought Juul. One of them is heavily now invested in marijuana. But my gut reaction when I heard the news was, I'm guessing that the tobacco industry sees some of these vaping products cutting into their margins, and so they're out to do something. And here's the thing as well: you've got an industry that, particularly at most grocery stores and whatnot, where these are engaged, you're not getting the black market chemical residue that killed those 6 people. Now, kids, don't do drugs, don't do cigarettes, don't vape. You shouldn't. Nicotine is addictive, but the government doing this, again, this to me is all about smaller government and conservatism. And I don't know that the government needs to be in the business of wiping out an established industry. This stuff has been around for a while, by the way. It has been around a while, and only now is the government getting involved because 6 people died through black market marijuana vaping, not nicotine, not tobacco, not anything like that. Black market marijuana, and what they actually think it was possibly recycled cartridges that caused the problem, but they don't really know. And so now we're going to do this. Jeez, come on, Russell in Peachtree Corners, you're next. Russell.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
All right. Yeah, I was telling the guy that answered, I've been smoking cigarettes since I was 9 years old.
Holy cats, 9?
Yep,
Wow.
9. I'm 56 years old, and I've been vaping for the last 4 years, completely off of cigarettes. And I'm to a point now where the smell or taste of a cigarette just turns my stomach.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do away with the flavored vapes, which is what I use, I buy them from reputable companies. Plus, my brother-in-law owns 3 vape shops in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And if they go to this nothing but nicotine-flavored vape, I'm going to have to stop it because it'll just literally make me sick.
Good grief. Yeah, see, I mean, there are people who are weaning off cigarettes with it. Thanks very much for that. I have no idea. Let's go. Kathy in Danielsville, you are up next. Welcome. Kathy, you there? Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
Hi there.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Hey.
So what's going on? Yes, it is.
I am so glad to get you. I am a listener now for a few years, and I love your program.
Thank you so much.
Guy.
Thank you. So what do you think about this vaping stuff?
Well, I have a comment. My son was sweet enough. May was my birthday, and my son, for my birthday, said, "Mom, I want you to quit smoking." So he gave me a vape. He knew about vape shops. He was getting into one, and he got me the menthol vape because I smoked the Camel menthol cigarette.
Right.
And I smoked for not even 4 months, and I don't vape or smoke.
Good for you.
And if people do it responsibly, anything, if they drink responsibly, if they eat responsibly, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
You go from smoking to vaping to quitting. But people abuse it as they do so many products on the market, and those are the ones that are killing themselves because instead of smoking responsibly, they're just inhaling it. And I see the commercials where they're blowing it out of their nose. I never did that.
Yeah.
I just vaped enough to, get my little buzz going like a cigarette, and that was it. I'm not just vaping off the chain and trying to get, go in outer space with it.
Well, yeah, and you were able to wean yourself off of it. Kathy, thanks. I gotta leave it there, but thank you very much for calling in. I'm hearing lots of these stories, and what are people going to do? A buddy of mine sends me deeply troubling news that social justice yoga is a thing. I'm sure it's something that white people like. I'm like Pete Buttigieg. I got nothing on that one. Wow. Well, so the Democrats, they're debating tonight in Houston, Texas, and their goal is to lock in the suburbs. I just actually read a very interesting piece in the Cook Political Report that, Democrats are making inroads into the suburban core of the top 20 cities in America. But if you look at the top 100 suburban cores in America, the Democrats lose everything outside the top 20. And why is that? Well, it's because of the black vote, it turns out. That in these top 20 cities in America, the suburbs are increasingly becoming majority-minority. And white voters are moving out of the suburbs into exurban areas, which are the one step removed from the suburban core. Think Cherokee County is exurban, northern Fulton is suburban. And guess what? The Democrats are losing the exurban areas by more than they're gaining in the suburban areas. So it's not all roses for the Democrats there. It also provides a real inroad for the Republicans to make some gains in 2020. We'll see if they can pull it off.